Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever you are joining us from. Welcome to this LinkedIn Live Office Hour broadcast. I am so pleased that you are able to join us. And if you are dialing in, watching us on your laptop, on your mobile phone, or on LinkedIn, please let us know where you're dialing in from, and we're really excited to have you here. My name is Christina.Charenkova, and if you haven't come across me before, I am in the area of change management, organizational change, project management, organizational transformation, um, anything that deals with people having to go through changes at work. And I really love that area because all, everyone, all of us have to go through change. And some of the principles that we can apply to organizational change, we can also apply to our personal lives, and we can learn. And it's that kind of continuous learning and growth that I really enjoy. I also really love people and how people are impacted by what we do every day in our lives, and all the different innovation, technologies, culture, and how that shapes us, and how do we collaborate and become more fruitful and more positive work environment. So in all of that, I guess one of the biggest changes that we see coming on the horizon is the rise of AI and generative AI, and how that shapes our organizational landscape. I'm really pleased today because I managed to connect with Chris Shipley. Chris is a fellow LinkedIn Learning instructor, and she also is a technologist, a technology journalist, and someone who has been writing about AI since 1989. She is extremely knowledgeable in that area, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Chris, welcome to the broadcast. I would love to hear a little bit about your experience and what led you to become a technology and technology journalist.
Well, first, Christina, thank you for reaching out and for our past conversations. I'm looking forward to having more of that conversation today. I'm kind of an accidental technologist. Many years ago, with a background in journalism, was looking for new work, and this emerging publication called PC Week was on the horizon, and I thought, well, that looks kind of interesting. Let's see if I can get a job there, and that's kind of what happened. But as someone whose background was really in the humanities, what worked for me, and I think has worked well for me across my career, has been, of course, getting knowledgeable about technology, but also really looking at, as you just said, where technology and human beings come together, and how technology can be a lever, and sometimes technology and people can collide, and how do
Yeah.
we as people remain adaptable and embrace these tools for the value they bring, but
Mm.
also understand when it's time to kind of put them down. And so that kind of interaction between technology and our human selves is really interesting to me as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, and you mentioned in a previous conversation to me that you have been writing about AI since 1989. How have you seen, and that's enormous, right? How have you seen that conversation evolve, and what does generative AI now bring to the conversation that's new and perhaps has people more on guard that we didn't have before?
Yeah. Well, frankly, it changes the whole conversation. But when I think I shared with you when we spoke previously, I was a young reporter for a technology publication, and AI was a safe beat to give a new reporter because it was all very academic, and you could be pretty sure that there wasn't going to be a big breaking story that was going to get missed because it was such
Yeah.
an academic field. And so I spent my time talking to um, professors at Carnegie Mellon and MIT, and looking at robotics and trying to understand the value, the workplace value of expert systems. And this was, in the 80s and early 90s. Um, but we saw at that time this kind of hype cycle, right, where like AI
Mm,
was going to be included in all these personal computing products, and it was going to make everything so much better. And
yeah,
then it didn't live up to the promise, which
right.
it didn't live up to the hype, and it kind of faded away. And so the article you're referring to, I wrote in '89, was called "Whatever Happened to AI," and it was about
Mm,
this hype bubble that then that exploded. And very quietly in the background, all sorts of different work has been done that is in that broader sense of artificial intelligence. Work on natural language processing and text to speech and speech to text, and um, lots of different facets, predictive modeling that's been used
yeah.
from the onset of online shopping, right? So when Amazon says, "I think you might like this," or
Mm,
when the Play Store recommends a product or a streaming service recommends a new song, that's all a kind of AI, and it's just been kind of quietly in our systems. And then along comes generative AI, and now there's this consumer product essentially that people are really trying to get their heads around, because it's
mm,
made AI um, as a technology far more real and front and center, whereas many of the other components of this sort of broader understanding of what artificial intelligence is as an area of study got to be integrated in a way that was just like, oh, I now have better turn directions because I don't know, my map
yeah,
systems are better, or I now have more accurate text to speech because Siri does some things that
yeah,
are really helpful to me.
yeah.
We didn't talk about them as AI, and now with generative AI, that is the conversation, and I think that's what
Mm,
gets people really excited, and it's also what gets some people a little bit apprehensive.
yes. Well, the apprehension, I guess, we've seen in the corporate world and organizations where there's a lot of, I guess, considerations around what is a safe use of generative AI, which is a fair question. And I guess on the other side, there's this question of, roles, and what would the roles of the future would look like, and how many jobs will generative AI make disappear, and all of these, I suppose, quite daunting questions for some people and some organizations. From what you've seen, where are the true opportunities here for organizations and for leaders when it comes to generative AI? How should one be thinking about it if this is something your organization is starting to have a taste for but doesn't quite know, what are the first few things we need to be thinking about, and some of the useful considerations to have in mind?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack in that question. I would say the first place to start is just to be curious, to begin to explore, right? That there are a set of these new technologies that have all kinds of applications, and how they might
Mhm.
impact your business is maybe even unique to your business. I think what's true is that any task that is routine and consistent is something that's ripe for automation. Right? That AI can do many things much more quickly than humans can because of the compute power.
Yeah.
So if there is a massive amount of data, and you're as a human being are to sift through it to try to identify the trends or find the outliers, well, an AI can do that. A computer can do that very, very quickly.
Mm.
Right? And so that's rightfully a task that should move to automation and technology. Other things require a lot more human, variability, and I think that's where we look at how can AI and generative AI be a partner with a
Mm.
knowledge worker to actually be a tool to make the work more efficient, more effective. And I think the answer to your question is it could be anywhere. I think we just don't know yet,
Yeah.
and that's why coming to AI as a leader in your organization with a learner's mind, with an explorer's mindset,
Mm.
um, creating opportunities for your organization, for your people to learn and to try things out and do some experimentations. that mindset, I think, is going to help organizations get ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
in a curve that's swelling very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that call for experimentation. I think, you know, rather than being on a cautious side and not having that curiosity towards it, I think it really pays dividends to be experimenting with it, to save some sort of area that doesn't it's small enough to be able to experiment with, but then have the capacity to scale up and have the capacity to broaden that to the bigger organization or to the larger organization. Where I've seen most of the gains and where I see huge potential is, this notion of helping with administrative tasks, helping, elevate us from having to write hundreds of emails a day, having to respond straight away to meeting requests. And if you have a clever assistant working with you side by side, someone who or something that can respond to these requests and frees up your time, your thinking time, then you'd be able to spend more thinking time on the things that matter. I suppose on the other side, what I see is this notion of pseudo productivity. I'm seen responding to emails, and I'm seen having sitting in many meetings, and I'm busy, I'm doing stuff, but it doesn't necessarily translate to actually producing anything of value to the company. Me responding to email doesn't necessarily amount to me producing a report or me building a hypothesis or a point of view or building on that experimentation part. So I I I suppose where I want to see this experimentation take place is really for people to be bold enough and for leaders to be bold enough to move away from the pseudo productivity, move away from presenteeism and having people sit on desks and doing admin stuff when they're not actually you know adding value, as in producing outputs that really matter, something that you're really proud of. I mean, would you turn around 5 years from now and say, oh, every day I answered 150 emails and that made me a really productive worker?
Yeah. Well, I think you touch on something a lot of things in there, and I'm going to maybe make this a sidebar of a conversation, not specifically about AI, but I think you're right that this pseudo productivity is a vestige of a way we were taught to lead and to be in an organization. You're going to be at the office right at the crack of dawn, and you're going to work until you're the last one there, and you're going
Yeah.
to answer all your emails within minutes, and this whole set of things that were about what it meant to be a leader and what it meant to be an engaged employee. And it turns out that very little of that actually matters, right? In the term of real performance. And I like the term performance over productivity, in the sense that productivity kind of counts widgets, right? How many emails did I respond today? But performance is, how many of the right emails did I see that
Yeah.
helped me see opportunity for my organization and
Yeah.
gave me the opportunity to sit back and maybe collaborate with some of my peers and to come up with a unique and important, valuable solution, and then communicate that through a channel called email. Not, is my inbox empty? My empty
Yeah.
inbox has meaning to no one but me. Right?
Yeah,
But
that's right.
finding that right email that creates a conversation with someone to explore a new idea or opens up an opportunity, that's what's critical. So back to AI, if an AI can say, hey, Chris, you got 200 emails in your inbox this morning, but these 5, I think, are the ones that matter. Or these 20, I was able to unsubscribe to that,
Yes.
marketing
Yeah.
newsletter that you never read anyway. That's a very good administrative use of AI. And then, our role as leaders, I think, is to kind of think about, how do we evolve our leadership style so that it is inclusive of a more creative economy, by which I don't mean, artsy and, but being unleashing our creative minds to
Yeah.
work on the really important problems that organizations have, or the really big opportunities that come from those problems that are identified. AI will help a lot of things. AI in drug discovery is going to be amazing, and it's going to
Mm,
drugs come to market far more quickly, and that's a really great thing. And
yeah.
yet it still takes a human being to say, hey, here's this orphan issue that hasn't no one's looked at yet. Help
Yeah.
me
Right.
train an AI on that so that we can now
Yeah.
afford to make drugs for a condition that, a very small population might have. Whereas in the
Yes.
past, it took so much effort to do that drug discovery
Mm,
that those orphan conditions just didn't get attention. Right?
yeah.
So now we have this new tool, and there's a lot in there that I've just said, but I think the key of it is let's let's look at our leadership style to think about what we let go of in terms of our widget counting management practices,
Yeah.
so that we can embrace a new way of working together to identify and solve really hard and valuable problems. And then in the process of doing that, look to see how AI can be an assistant to
Mm,
take the widget counting off of our plates, but also help be part of the discovery process.
yeah. Yeah. And in this, I think what we also need to be prepared for is for leaders and for organizations to have that little bit of flexibility. Because as we know, as we're figuring things out, not everything will be 100%, not everything will turn out, spot on, successful. And that sort of mindset of trial and error a little bit, a mindset of being flexible, being adaptive to change. Um, it takes time. Change takes time, and I think a lot of the questions that I see pop up are, what are the use cases? How do we implement generative AI today? And it's like, whoa, okay, yeah, there are certainly use cases you can do today. And there is certainly processes that you can follow and steps, and you can prompt it different ways. But every organization is unique and different, and all of the employees and that how they use technology is unique and different to that organization. So take steps back and appreciate, do the experimentation, do the work, and figure out what is the best use cases for you in that scenario. What do you think about that? How does that apply to the conversations that you've been having recently?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the hardest thing for many leaders to say, but the true answer to that question is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I don't know is this
Yeah.
place of vulnerability. I'm the leader. I'm supposed to know everything. But
Yeah.
shifting that mindset to say, I don't know, but let's learn and discover together. So let's create an
Mm,
environment where we can say, listen, I'm not sure how we're going to use these tools.
yeah.
However, I think they will be important. So let's all get comfortable, because
Yeah.
I appreciate your comment about, change takes time. The reality is change is happening, like the slowest pace of change you are ever going to experience ever again in your life is right now.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the time to absorb change. We have to learn to live with change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that,
Completely.
so that requires, I think, a different style of leadership and a different style of employee engagement that's centered on learning. Right? So
Mm,
I would say to, like, let's just make learning about AI as a tool, much
mm,
the way we'd make, learning about, how we learned how to use spreadsheets or and any other tool at work, right?
yeah.
What are the experiments we can do? Who do we bring in for lunchtime learning sessions? Who do we, what articles do we share with one another? What challenges do we create in our organization so that we can say, listen,
Yeah.
let's see who can prompt an AI to write the best customer um, introduction memo,
Yeah.
email, and let's be playful with this period of learning and discovery, and then figure out, this is something I might be able to completely turn over to AI, or this is something where AI is an assist. So
Yeah.
there were times that I working on a project and I just feel like I have writer's block and I'm not sure where to go, and I'll throw a prompt into ChatGPT and
Mm.
come back with something. And sometimes it's like that, I hadn't thought about that. That's really cool. I'm going to try that. I can build on that, right? I'm not going to
Yeah.
take that work and present it as my own, but I'm going to use that as a starter for my own thinking. And so
Yeah.
in that way, AI can be a tool.
Yeah.
There's just so many different applications that right now it's just wade in. It's a big ocean. We don't want to drop you in the middle of it. You just need to wade in a little bit and let the waves come across your toes, and you start to get comfortable, and then you go a little deeper and a little
Yeah.
deeper. And I think that's where most people are in most particularly business office kind of settings today.
Mm. Yeah. I think to build on what you said, a little bit about like how do we uncover the possibilities and the potential is, we get together, we work, we collaborate, we do lunch and learn sessions. It sounds like not every organization is there yet. It sounds like it's a revamp of culture, of organizational behavior. And if we think of some establishments that haven't necessarily built on that collaboration and haven't built on that, how do we problem solve together cross
Mhm.
departments, we still have a bit of work to do. We still have quite some time, yet the change is here.
Yeah.
Yet generative AI is here, the opportunities are right at our doorstep. And thinking about one of the biggest, I suppose, skills, one of the top skills that came through from the LinkedIn Learning um, report, which identifies the top skills for professionals to have in 2024, was to have adaptability. And that sounds about right. That sounds, like exactly what we're talking about: how to be adaptable, how to change with the turning tides, how to put your toes in the water and figure out how deep you can go in. um, and I wanted to touch a little bit on your book, which is called The Adaptability Advantage. So very nicely builds on that adaptability. um, I guess if you are in an organization that is still grappling with how to be adaptable, how to collaborate and communicate and do critical thinking together as one and cross departments, um where does one start?
It's a great question. Like, we are from a very early age um, taught to identify ourselves to a career or to a role, right? So we ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And before you even, or even as you're applying for college, they want you, in the United States anyway and elsewhere, to say, this is what I plan to study. This will be my major. And our cocktail party icebreaker is always, so what do you do for a living, right? So
Yeah.
we're so
Yeah.
attached to these career identities. And adaptability recognizes that identity is also very fluid. It will be fluid going
Mm.
forward. Um, uh, some organizations in Australia, and I'm going to blank on the name, but they were looking at youth and their future of work. And it was something like you'll work in 15 different industries or career types over the course of a career, because things are changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And so we have to kind of let go of that personal identity, work identity, to embrace,
Mm.
again, a more adaptable mindset, a more learning mindset that says, I'm working to a purpose. Like, it's not that I want to be an accountant. It's that I want to help organizations run really efficiently. And by making sure their
Yeah.
finances are in order, that'll happen. And now that's a whole lot of different roles across finance and operations.
Mm.
It's a different kind of, it's more purpose-driven identity that allows us then, when an AI comes over to take over accounts receivable, that's great. Now I don't have to do that. I can go do something else, and I don't feel like
Yeah.
my tasks are being taken away. And I do think that we need to be really blunt about this, that there are many tasks that AI will take, and
Yeah.
that will be parts of people's jobs. In some instances, it may be people's entire jobs, and that's very disruptive and personally frightening and it's understandable. As we think about if that is the case, what are the parts of my job that are so routine and definable that an algorithm can do them as
Mm.
easily and more cheaply than I? What does that leave, and where can I then grow from there? And that's the kind of question, I think,
Yeah.
that if you ask yourself enough, you'll start to understand how you need to, or how you can adapt, what is, where do your passions lead you in deciding that, okay, I
Mm.
no longer need to do this part of my job, but that leaves a whole lot of bandwidth to go explore this other thing that I think is really could be important in my organization or important in my career. And I
Yeah.
think that's the adaptability mindset that helps navigate this time when, quite honestly, we do have some business leaders who are saying AI is going to replace X% of our workforce.
Mm.
And the irony to there, and this is as an aside, is, AIs are really good at decision making, and CEOs' jobs are largely about decision making. So I often wonder whose jobs are going to be taken by AI. Is it the little guy somewhere down the org chart, or is it an
Yeah.
executive who thinks that they've got all the answers? But I
Go
just
figure.
all need to be adaptable in this
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think it's an interesting, very interesting dynamic at the moment, and I see sort of lots of different scenarios playing out. One of the scenarios I see is, juniors are very interested in generative AI, and when I say juniors, someone that's new to a job or just come out of university, or perhaps someone that hasn't started to climb the corporate ladder, and naturally they are technologists because technology has been in their life from a very early age, and they are trying all this on a personal scale, and they see the opportunities, and they perhaps have a leader who is opposed it, or the organization has very strict rules around data and about sharing, and what information can be posted into a generative AI tool. And I think that's understandable. So I think for that scenario, we kind of spoke about, perhaps there's a little experimentation that we can be set up, or cross-functional, or find out who are the change champions, and then maybe build that small team of um, experiment. I was gonna make up a word, but then it wasn't gonna work. People that wanted to champion that. Yeah.
And let me give you a suggestion, so in that vein, right? So I have been writing about technology and working with companies and doing keynote talks and all of that for nearly 40 years. I have a massive amount of archive, if you will, of
Yeah.
writing and talks and that sort of thing. And so very recently I thought, what I would really love to do is create a Chris GPT. And I want to train a model with
Right.
everything that I've ever done. So, and my purpose was so that I could have a conversation with myself. Like, back in the day, when was I thinking about this, and have this kind of feedback to me, some of the things that maybe I've even forgotten that I've written, and to use it as a tool in my own writing and research and consulting. Um, I'm not a developer, right?
Yes.
And these tools
Yeah.
don't necessarily require a ton of development skill, but I've got a 24-year-old who is nuts about this stuff. And he's like,
Mm.
give it to me. Give me all that stuff. If you give me all that stuff, I will make this happen for you. And
Yeah.
so this is an interesting collaboration where you've got this complete passion for the technology component, and then this career worth of experience
Yes.
that can
Yeah.
be, it can be potentially be modeled. And so think about that in your organization. Maybe you have, the person in the colloquialism, he knows where all the bodies are buried, right? Somebody who's been in the organization for 30, 40 years and has, massive amounts of notes and records and presentations and all this sort of stuff. That person with an excited technology-minded youth, if you will, to create this accessible archive of corporate learning. And that's an interesting experiment. And I
Yes.
bet you that
Yeah, I
most
love that.
companies would be able to conduct that experiment in some way.
Mm.
Just with the raw material that's within the organization kind of buried in hard drives and network servers and file cabinets. And
Yeah, I love it.
that's where you start to see where you get this intergenerational collaboration, where
Mm.
experience and this sort of new drive to engage in technology come together to form a powerful partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Have you seen the opposite take place, where you have a really energetic leader, someone who, wants to make it happen, someone who can see the potential, but they need to motivate a team who isn't sold on the idea, or afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of letting go of the current situation, afraid of change. And I think that could be also a potential scenario that very realistically takes place in organizations now. Um, and your book talks about that, having that human-centered approach, human-first approach. What do you think are some of the motivational strategies, some of the behaviors that that leader can employ in order to motivate and to set some sort of, trust and collaboration that can be fruitful?
Yeah. Well, not to be self-promoting, but the second book, the first, the adaptation advantage, the second is the empathy advantage. And they kind of bookend
Right.
this, technology is changing and we need to be adaptive. And one of the ways we do that, especially in an age of a much more empowered workforce in many ways, and also in some ways a skeptical one, right? We've got a
Mm,
workforce that is realizing that, the corporation hasn't always been our friends, and here's
yeah.
this new technology. Is it going to take our job? Is it going to exploit my learning and experience? Lots and lots of questions. And I think that the enthusiastic leader has to be enthusiastic about the people in the room and really
Mm,
embrace, come at it with this, with an empathetic understanding of where they are, right? And meeting your teams, not to just come and say, we're going to go do AI and it's going to be grand, like, yeah, let's go. It's kind of like, hey, this is this new thing and we don't know much about it, so let's figure it out together. And I understand, and I can hear you talking about, I can hear
mm,
you talk about your work and your role, that you're concerned about, job security. And this isn't about replacing your job. Let's figure out how we make your job better. Like, it has to be this exploratory kind of conversation that starts at a very personal, empathetic, place, because
yeah.
that's, in my view, the only way you get to, you enable an engagement of people around this learning journey together.
Mm,
Otherwise, it's like, oh yeah, you just want to suck my brain, and then you're going to fire me, and I'm not going to play that game. And it's hard to get much out of that, and it's a that's not a good
yeah.
start, right? But let's come along on this ride together, because we all have to know. And I don't know the answers, and you don't know the answers, but let's see if we can figure it out together.
Yes. Yeah, and I can almost, from a change management perspective, it's kind of like, we'll map out where people are on their journey and understand what their drivers are, what their concerns are, for your own team, and then together start having the conversation and be completely open about it, as you mentioned. We don't know where the opportunities lie, but we're about to discover them together. And I think that transparency creates trust, and then trust within that team can be a very powerful tool to move that team forward, versus the other way around of, well,
Yeah,
everything's done behind closed doors. So we have this team who's going to be the AI implementation team, and they're going to look at it, and it's going to be behind a closed door.
and it's going to be a big mystery, and then it's going to happen
Yes.
to you, and nobody
Yeah.
wants that. to happen
Yeah.
to them. They want to be part of change. So when you can align interests, hey, this
Yeah.
is something that we're going to do together. We're going to learn together, and now you can bring in outside expertise because you have
Yes.
this basis of trust. And instead
Yeah.
of, Mr. Brilliant AI strategist coming in and telling you how it's going to be, you've got people who have learned enough to be able to ask questions, to be able to
Mm.
push back, to be able to explore. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, this is true about AI, by the way. It's true about all aspects of leadership, right? We have to build a basis of trust and an aligned incentives for us to really be productive and performative in our performing
Mm.
in our workplaces
Mm. Yeah.
to the benefit of the bottom line of the company, but also the growth and the development of everybody who's working in it.
And also, I think it creates that positive work environment, positive work culture. Everyone's included in this. I don't feel like my boss are excluding me from this decision, or, I'm a leader who really understands the team and what their concerns are. I think it creates that, uniformity, if you like, within the work environment, which unfortunately not that many organizations have, but it's something that we can work on and we can build on.
Mhm.
Um, by the way, we were talking and busy discussing, and I wanted to ask whoever's joining us live, if you guys have any questions for either myself or Chris, please pop those in the chat. What are some of the concerns that you're seeing in your organizations? What are some of the wins that you might have had with generative AI? Have you implemented it? How did it work? Did you learn anything along the way? And so on. These are all really interesting points that would be beautiful to have on this conversation, and we can share with the broader community, because I suppose one of the best things about LinkedIn is the fact that we have this community of global professionals that can share experience, that can share know-how, and that can share concerns and challenges, and have that joint problem solving at their fingertips. So please feel free to drop that in the comments. If you're watching this as a recording, and the broadcast is already finished, please know that both myself and Chris will be monitoring the questions after the broadcast, and we'll make sure that all of the questions or the points have been answered and responded to. Sorry,
Yeah.
Chris, go
No,
for it.
and I'm just encouraged. Anyway, please feel free to reach out and find me on LinkedIn and connect. I'm happy to have these conversations. And I really, often these conversations are triggers for getting to learn more about your experiences. And I would really
Yeah.
love to hear what you're doing. I wanted to share a story because I think we are talking about AI and in the context of work. And it might be difficult for some people to just kind of walk into the office and say, "Hey, look what I got
Mm.
GPT to do,"
Yes.
when they're not sure, and companies are still trying to figure out what their policies are around this. But there's a lot of things you can do outside of work to just become familiar. And this literally was just a conversation that happened today. I was at a dinner party last night, and this morning, one of the people who was at the party said, I've tried to find new words to just describe what a wonderful evening it was. And so I got a thesaurus, and I've got, it was stupendous, and it was magnificent, and it was a very lovely thank you note. And then the host wrote back saying, well, you've got a thesaurus. We've got AI. And it was this, we're so, thankful for your attendance. Like the chat GPT had written this beautiful thank you note back. And,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
you question some of its authenticity, if you will, but it was
Yes.
just a fun way for this person to experiment with what can this thing do? How can I
Mm.
play with technology in a way that is letting me see what the capabilities are?
Yeah.
So I'd encourage you to think about um, what kind of everyday prompts might you experiment with to, write a better uh, excuses for a teacher, or so your kid's out of school, or to write the marketing for the Girl Scout cookie sale, or it's just stuff in your everyday life that
Yes.
gives you a chance to play with it and to come at generative AI, whether it's ChatGPT or it's Dolly, one of the image creation tools, with a sense of playfulness. Because I
Mm.
think that in that playfulness, you'll find discovery and a place where you can then maybe go into work the next day and say, hey, I was messing around with this for just to have fun. And what if we did this? Right? I said
Yeah.
it's a way to just begin to, again, get wet, get some experience that you can then figure out how to apply, rather than starting with the question of, you know, we need to put AI here, or we need
Yeah.
to automate this process, or we need to use AI. What are we going to do? Get to know AI and then think about what it can do for you.
Yeah. I love that call to, be more open to the opportunities by leveraging its power at a personal level and learning the different tools. I suppose one of the other sides is there are so many tools at the moment, and it can be overwhelming. There's a new tool popping up, if not every day, every second day, and I suppose that can be off-putting. I wanted to talk a little bit about the learning side of things, and there's actually a great question on that. That's just come out from Jessie Kramer. Jessie says, beyond what Chris talked about and be adaptable, what can an individual do best to prepare for AI in the workplace? Um, I wanted to mention the course that you did, Chris, for LinkedIn Learning, which I watched, and that's what prompted me to reach out and to connect with you, which is brilliant, and it gives some of those tools and ideas what can be done. But I'll let you talk a little bit about the course. Who is it aimed for? Is this something that professionals can do today? And what would your recommendations be?
Yeah, it's a course. I don't know. It's 30 minutes or so. It's not very long. And what I was trying to do in it is recognize that there's a lot of anxiety about AI. People aren't
Mm.
sure how it's going to affect them. AI seems like it's big science with really smart, PhD postdocs doing this research. I know how's little old me going to get my head around this? And and the reality is that what I wanted to do in the course was kind of just bring the temperature down a little bit and give you a chance to, just as I said before, wade in, and looking at some of the tools. And so it really talks about some of the tools that are there. Uh, I would also recommend that you just begin to poke around with things like, we're doing lots of meetings in Zoom. Increasingly, people are using Otter AI and other tools as note takers, and they're pretty
I
effective.
love it.
And so, giving those a shot, just trying them out to see what's possible. Um,
Mm.
and you can do that. It's very low risk, right? Because if you don't get good meeting notes, well, you didn't have good meeting notes before. So, it's a way to again learn what's possible.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the course is on LinkedIn Learning about being adaptable in the age of AI, and I would love anyone's feedback on it. I hope it's useful.
Yeah. Talking about the different tools, you mentioned a few tools there and note taking. Um, I tried a note taking AI for personal meetings, even meeting someone over a coffee, that I had to take notes. And I just thought, I'll just try it. It's on my phone. I can record it, see what it is like. It's free. Even if it stores the information, it's not necessarily something that's is sensitive. And I was completely taken aback. So now I'm a devotee. I do take meeting notes with generative AI, and I think it's brilliant. Is it 100% correct? Sometimes, and it learns. It learns as you learn it as well. So I think have the opportunity to create those opportunities, and then, as Chris says, if you start sparking the ideas about what that can translate into the workplace, and what are the best use case scenarios for that. As I said, any other questions that pop up or any considerations, even connecting with Chris and myself after this broadcast would be hugely beneficial. It'll be great to hear some real life stories, and to be able to help steer the the questions that you guys have got in your organizational contexts. Please feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, and connect. Chris, you're on LinkedIn. Where else can people find you? Are you doing any talks or anything with the book at the moment?
I do have a website, cshipley.com, talks about the books that are there and some other work. I'm hard at work at a couple of new books, so mostly you'll find me buried here in my working away. But I do encourage anyone to feel free to reach out on LinkedIn with any questions or comments or ideas to share. That's really one of the great values of LinkedIn, is creating that community. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy for this conversation today, Christina. Thank you for inviting me to it. And I look forward to seeing what it inspires in other people.
Yeah, fantastic. I love seeing sort of the ripple effect that it has, because of course this is something that people are going through at the moment, and hopefully it gives people ideas and a little, little nudges for them to take that next step and to make it happen. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
I thank you for everyone who joined us online. I appreciate you deciding to spend your time and attention here with us. And see you again soon.